The message came while Captain Samuel Wright was eating his breakfast. He looked at the small screen on his wrist and almost choked on his coffee. It was from someone he never expected to hear from, the Galactic Concord. The same Galactic Concord that had told humans they were not welcome among the stars just 5 years ago. Samuel put down his cup and opened the message fully. His brown eyes widened as he read. The Concord, a group of over 50 alien species that had ruled the galaxy for 30,000 years, was asking for help. Not just asking, begging. "Alert the crew," Samuel said to his second-in-command, Jack Peterson. "We need to change course." Jack raised an eyebrow but asked no questions. That was the nice thing about having a good crew. They trusted their captain. The Earth ship Dauntless was a fine vessel, not the biggest or the most advanced, but solid and reliable. Just like the 100 men and women who called it home. Within minutes, the ship's engines hummed louder as they turned toward the coordinates. In the message, Samuel stood on the bridge looking at the stars through the main window. Somewhere out there, the most powerful alliance in known space was falling apart. Back on Earth, the military council gathered in their underground meeting room. The air felt heavy as they watched the message that Samuel had forwarded to them. "We face extinction," said the alien on the screen. Its skin was pale blue with 4 eyes that blinked in pairs. "The void consumes all in its path. We have lost contact with 60% of our worlds in 3 months. We seek aid from any capable forces in this sector." When the message ended, the room stayed quiet for nearly a minute. Then Lisa Martinez, Earth's defense minister, stood up. Her short gray hair framed a face that had seen many hard decisions. "They said we were too unpredictable," she said, her voice firm but not angry. "They said we were too young as a species, too violent, too emotional, and now they want our help." General Frank Cooper nodded. "We could ignore them, let them face this void alone. They never did anything for us." Lisa walked to the window that looked out over the city. Lights twinkled below, millions of people living their lives, unaware of the choice being made above them. "That's not who we are," she said finally. "We don't help only those who have helped us. We don't turn away from suffering, even when it would be easy to do so." She turned back to the council members. "We send aid, not because they deserve it, but because that's what humans do." The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Earth would respond to the call. On the Dauntless, Samuel briefed his crew about their new mission. Some faces showed anger when they learned they were going to help the very aliens who had rejected humanity from their club. "I know how some of you feel," Samuel said, looking around the room. "But this isn't about old grudges. There's something out there destroying whole worlds. If it finishes with the Concord, where do you think it will turn next?" The crew nodded, their expressions serious. They understood the stakes. 3 days later, the Dauntless arrived at Proxima Station, a major Concord outpost near human space, or what was left of it. The once proud station was now mostly debris, with just the central hub still intact. "Life signs?" Samuel asked as they approached. "Faint readings from the central section," replied Susan Reynolds, the ship's science officer. Her fingers moved quickly over her screen. "Maybe 30 survivors, but their life support is failing." Samuel didn't hesitate. "Prepare rescue teams. We go in fast and get those people out." The rescue was not easy. Parts of the station were still falling apart, and the air was thin. Samuel led one of the teams himself, pushing through twisted corridors where the artificial gravity flickered on and off. They found the survivors huddled in what had once been a grand meeting hall. Most were injured. All were terrified. Among them was Ambassador Zexril, the blue-skinned alien who had sent the message. When Zexril saw humans coming through the door, the ambassador's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in what Samuel guessed was surprise. "You came," Zexril said simply. "You actually came." "Of course we did," Samuel replied, helping a young alien child to its feet. "That's what neighbors do." Back on the Dauntless, the ship's doctor, Olivia Bennett, worked tirelessly to treat the alien wounded. The ship wasn't designed for so many. Different species, but Olivia was clever and kind. She found ways to help each one. Rill watched her work with growing wonder. When Samuel came to check on the ambassador, Zixrill asked a question that had clearly been bothering the alien. Why? Zixrill asked. Why would you help us after we rejected your kind? Samuel thought for a moment before answering. Because every life matters. Because we don't measure the worth of someone by how they've treated us in the past. And because whatever this void is, it threatens all of us. The ambassador was quiet for a long time. We may have misjudged your species, Captain. Right. That's okay, Samuel said with a small smile. We humans are used to being underestimated. Later that night, after the survivors had been made comfortable, Zixrill met with Samuel and his officers in the ship's meeting room. The ambassador's blue skin looked pale under the lights. The void came without warning, Zixrill explained, voice trembling slightly. It's not a species or an empire, it's something else. A collective consciousness that consumes both organic and artificial minds. It absorbs knowledge and leaves nothing behind. Screens around the room showed images of the void's attacks, whole planets going dark, ships being swallowed by what looked like living darkness. Our scientists have found no effective defense, Zixrill continued. The Conquered has existed for 30,000 years. We have faced many threats, but nothing like this. How much time do we have? Asked Jack. At its current rate of expansion, 6 months before it reaches Earth. Perhaps less. The room fell silent as the humans processed this information. Earth had only been traveling among the stars for 70 years. They were babies compared to the ancient races of the Conquered. Yet, here they were, being asked to face a threat that had defeated civilizations far older and more advanced than their own. Samuel looked around at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, yes, but also determination. Humans had never backed down from a fight, especially when the odds were against them. Well, Samuel said, standing up straight, we better get to work then. As the meeting ended and plans began to form, Samuel couldn't help but remember an old saying his grandfather used to tell him. The hottest fires forge the strongest steel. Humanity was about to be tested in the fires of a galactic crisis, and Samuel had a feeling they might surprise everyone, including themselves, with how strong they truly were. The Dauntless raced back to Earth at top speed. Samuel watched the stars blur as they pushed the engines beyond their normal limits. The ship carried something more important than the alien survivors. It carried information about the void, and they needed every minute they could get. Dr. Olivia Carter waited for them at the main Earth space dock. She didn't look like someone who might save the galaxy. She was short with curly red hair, and she often forgot to eat when she was working. But Olivia had one of the best scientific minds on the planet. Is that it? She asked as soon as Samuel handed her a sealed container. Inside was a small piece of darkness that seemed to move on its own. A sample of the void collected from the edge of Proxima Station. Be careful, Samuel warned. Ambassador Zixrill says it can take over electronic systems and possibly minds too. Olivia nodded, her green eyes focused on the container. I'll take it to the secure lab right away. While Olivia began her work, Samuel reported to Earth Defense Command. Lisa Martinez listened carefully to his account of what they had found. The Concord has lost more than half their territory in 3 months, Samuel explained. They estimate 6 months before the void reaches Earth. Lisa's face remained calm, but Samuel saw worry in her eyes. Then we have 6 months to figure out how to stop it. She pressed a button on her desk. I'm calling in everyone, scientists, military, even the old think tanks we haven't used since the colony wars. The Concord has better technology, more resources, Samuel pointed out. If they couldn't stop it. Lisa stood up and walked to a map of Earth's colonies. They were few compared to the vast territories of the Concord. Yes, but we have something they don't. What's that? We're human, she said simply. We're messy. We improvise. We don't follow the rules when the rules don't work. She turned to face him. The Concord has been stable for 30,000 years. When was the last time they faced a real threat? Samuel thought about the aliens he had rescued. They had been shocked, paralyzed by the attack. They've forgotten how to fight for survival. Exactly. But we haven't. In her lab, Olivia worked day and night. The Concord had sent their research data, which showed careful, methodical testing that had gotten nowhere. Olivia read it all, then set it aside and tried something completely different. She played with quantum frequencies, bombarding the void sample with different energy patterns. Other scientists thought she was wasting time. The Concord had already tried similar approaches over months of testing, but they hadn't tried it Olivia's way: quick, dirty, and wildly creative. On the fourth day, when she was so tired she could barely stand, she saw something interesting. One particular frequency made the sample shrink away just a little. "Got you," she whispered, a tired smile spreading across her face. While Olivia worked, Admiral Paul Winters gathered Earth's fleet. It wasn't much compared to what the Concorde had once had, just 40 major warships and about 100 smaller vessels. But they were tough ships built by people who knew that space was dangerous. "We need new tactics," Paul told his captains during their first planning meeting. "The Void adapts to standard approaches." Captain Alice Young raised her hand. "Sir, what about the Riverside Maneuver?" Several officers looked surprised. The Riverside Maneuver was considered too risky for actual combat, a complex flight pattern where ships would seem to retreat, then suddenly loop back in an unpredictable attack. Paul nodded slowly. "Risky, high chance of friendly fire." Then he smiled. "Let's work on it, and any other crazy ideas you've got." Ambassador Zixril, now recovering in Earth's main hospital, watched these preparations with growing interest. The ambassador had requested daily updates and was surprised by what the report showed. When Samuel came to visit, Zixril had questions. "Your scientists are testing methods the Concord already proved ineffective," the ambassador said, four eyes blinking in confusion. "And your military is practicing maneuvers that have a high probability of failure. Why?" Samuel sat down beside the alien's bed. "Because sometimes you have to try things that shouldn't work to find what does work." "This is not efficient," Zixril insisted. "No, it's not," Samuel agreed. "But efficiency isn't everything. Sometimes you need chaos to find new patterns." The ambassador was quiet for a moment. "You are a strange species, Captain Wright. In just days, you've done more than our emergency council did in weeks." "We've had more practice at facing doom," Samuel said with a small smile. "Your people have been safe for thousands of years. We've been fighting to survive our whole history." 2 weeks after the Dauntless returned to Earth, Olivia called an emergency meeting. She looked exhausted but excited as she showed her findings to the gathered military and political leaders. "The Void is a collective consciousness," she explained, pointing to her data. "But it's not perfect. It has a weakness." She played a video showing her sample retreating from a particular energy wave. "This quantum frequency disrupts its ability to communicate with itself. It's like giving it a headache." Lisa leaned forward. "Can we use this as a weapon?" "I think so," Olivia said. "I've designed a device that can generate this frequency on a larger scale. If we can get it close enough to a large concentration of the Void, it could disrupt their entire network," Samuel finished. Paul studied the designs for the device. "Getting it close will be the problem. The Void destroys anything that approaches." "That's where our new tactics come in," Samuel said. "The ones that are too unpredictable to make sense." The room was quiet as everyone considered the plan that was forming. It wasn't perfect. It was risky. A Concord military leader would probably reject it as having too low a probability of success. But humans didn't need certainty. They just needed a fighting chance. Over the next few days, Earth prepared. The quantum disruptor was built in record time, with Olivia personally overseeing every step. The fleet practiced maneuvers that the Concord tactical computers had labeled as irrational and suicidal. Ambassador Zixril, now well enough to attend planning sessions, watched with growing amazement as humans threw themselves into preparations that seemed to have no logical pattern. "I begin to understand," Zixril told Samuel one evening as they watched ships practicing the Riverside Maneuver. through the windows of Earth Command. Your species' greatest strength is not your technology or even your courage. What is it then? Samuel asked. Your adaptability, the ambassador said, born from your brief, struggle-filled evolutionary history. The alien's 4 eyes looked at Samuel with new respect. You are what the galaxy needs right now. Samuel wasn't sure how to respond to that. Finally, he simply said, We'll see. The real test is still ahead. And indeed it was. Just 3 days later, long-range sensors detected a large force of void ships heading toward Arcturus Junction, a critical Concord transportation hub. If it fell, the way to Earth would be open. It's time, Lisa told the gathered fleet commanders. We either stop them there or we may not get another chance. As the Earth fleet prepared to depart, Samuel found himself back in command of the Dauntless. His ship would carry the prototype quantum disruptor, with Olivia herself coming along. To operate it, they would be at the center of the battle with everything at stake. As Samuel looked around at his crew, he saw nervousness but also determination. Humans had always done their best work when backed into a corner. All ships, prepare. For jump, he ordered. We're going to Arcturus. The human fleet arrived at Arcturus Junction to find a scene of horror. The once busy space station was surrounded by void ships. They looked like black clouds that somehow held their shape, moving with purpose through the stars. Smaller pieces of the void were already attaching themselves to the outer rings of the station. All ships battle formation, Admiral Paul ordered from his command ship. His voice was calm, but Samuel could hear the tension behind it. This would be humanity's first real fight against the void. The human ships spread out in what appeared to be a random pattern. To the few remaining Concord officers watching from their vessels, it looked like chaos. There was no proper line, no clear defense strategy. What are they doing? A Concord captain asked Ambassador Zixriel, who had joined the human fleet as an observer. Winning, I hope, Zixriel replied quietly. The void noticed the newcomers and turned some of its ships toward them. It moved like a single creature rather than a fleet, shifting and flowing through space. Now, said Admiral Paul, and the human fleet sprang into action. Ships darted forward, then back, then sideways in patterns that made no logical sense. The riverside maneuver that they had practiced came into play, with vessels seeming to retreat and then suddenly looping back to attack from unexpected angles. The void tried to adapt, but it couldn't predict what the humans would do next, because the humans themselves didn't know. Captains made split-second decisions, changing plans mid-maneuver based on gut feelings and quick thinking. On the Dauntless, Samuel guided his ship toward the heart of the void fleet. They carried the prototype quantum disruptor, and they needed to get close enough to use it. Shields at maximum, he ordered as they took fire from 3 void ships at once. The ship shook but held together. We won't survive another hit like that, Jack warned from his station. We won't have to, Samuel replied. Look, 2 Earth ships had broken through the void's line and were drawing fire away from the Dauntless. It was a dangerous move for them, but it gave Samuel the opening he needed. Dr. Carter, are you ready? He called to Olivia, who was in the science lab with her device. Ready as I'll ever be, she answered, her voice strained but determined. Get me within range. Samuel ordered full speed ahead. The Dauntless shot forward straight toward the largest concentration of void ships. It was a move that defied all standard tactics, which was exactly why it worked. The void wasn't prepared for such a direct approach. We're in range, the navigation officer called out. Now, Dr. Carter, Samuel ordered. In the lab, Olivia activated her quantum disruptor. The ship hummed with new energy as waves of the special frequency pulsed outward. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the void ships nearest to them began to tremble and lose shape. It's working, Jack exclaimed. The effect spread from ship to ship like ripples in a pond. The void's coordination was breaking down. Individual ships began to move erratically, some even firing on each other in confusion. All ships press the advantage, Admiral Paul commanded. The human fleet surged forward, targeting the now disorganized void ships. But the void was still dangerous. One of its larger ships broke through the human line and headed straight for the station. If it reached the core, it could consume the entire junction. "We need a strike team on that station," Samuel said, making a quick decision. "If the Void takes it, we lose our foothold in this sector." Lieutenant Ellen Ross volunteered to lead the mission. She was young but steady, with sharp eyes and quick reflexes. Samuel gave her a portable version of the quantum disruptor. "Get this to the station's power core," he told her. "It should disrupt any Void presence there." Ellen nodded, her face serious but not afraid. "We won't let you down, Captain." Her team took a shuttle across to the station, dodging debris and enemy fire. Once inside, they found chaos. Parts of the station were already being consumed by the Void, walls and floors turning black as the substance spread. The few Concord soldiers still on board were frozen in fear, unable to adapt to the horror they were seeing. But Ellen's team pushed forward, adjusting their tactics with each new challenge. When their energy weapons proved ineffective against a new form of the Void, they switched to physical projectiles. When standard communications failed, they used hand signals. When the direct route was blocked, they climbed through maintenance shafts. Ellen led her team deeper into the station, finally reaching the central power core. Here the Void was thickest, forming tentacle-like structures that reached for the core's energy. "Set up the disruptor," Ellen ordered her team, "and be ready to run." They placed Olivia's device near the core and activated it. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Void recoiled from the quantum frequency, its tendrils withering and shrinking back. Ellen's team fought their way back to the shuttle, carrying injured Concord crew with them. As they launched back toward the Dauntless, they could see that the battle outside had turned in their favor. The human fleet had broken the Void's formation completely. Individual ships were being targeted and destroyed, unable to support each other without their hive mind connection. Back on the Dauntless, Samuel watched the enemy retreat with a mixture of relief and disbelief. They had done it. Humanity had won its first battle against the Void. The mood on the ship was one of exhausted triumph. Crew members who had been tense for hours finally allowed themselves to smile and even cheer as the last Void ships disappeared. When Ellen's shuttle returned safely, Samuel met them in the landing bay. "Well done, Lieutenant," he said, noticing the dirt and blood on her uniform. "You saved the station." Ellen gave a tired salute. "The team did, sir, and Dr. Carter's device worked perfectly." Word of the victory spread quickly. Across Concord space, the news traveled from system to system. The humans had achieved what the advanced civilizations could not. They had fought the Void and won. On what remained of Arcturus Junction, a meeting was called. The highest-ranking Concord officials still alive gathered to discuss what had happened. Their tactics defied all logic, one alien leader said, his tentacles waving in agitation. They took unnecessary risks. They ignored centuries of established military doctrine. And they succeeded where we failed, Ambassador Zex Rill pointed out quietly. The debate lasted for hours, but in the end, necessity overcame pride. The Concord, the oldest and grandest alliance in the galaxy, formally requested that Earth take leadership in the war effort. When Samuel returned to his ship after the meeting, his crew was waiting for the news. He looked around at their faces, humans who had left Earth to explore the stars and now found themselves defenders of the galaxy. "Well?" Jack asked. "What did they say?" Samuel took a deep breath. "They've asked us to lead the fight against the Void. All of us. Earth is now in command of the Concord forces." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then someone in the back began to clap, and soon the whole crew joined in. It was a historic moment. Humanity, the youngest spacefaring species, had just taken command of the oldest interstellar alliance. The galaxy was falling, but humans were stepping into the fire, ready to fight for everyone's survival. 6 months passed since the victory at Arcturus Junction. The war against the Void had changed. With humans leading the fight, the galaxy was pushing back against the darkness that had seemed unstoppable before. Admiral Paul Winters now commanded the combined fleet from Earth's orbital headquarters. Maps of the galaxy showed territories that had been reclaimed from the Void, glowing blue against the black of space. But there were still large areas covered in red, places where the Void held strong. "We've made good progress," Paul told the gathered war council. The room held both human leaders and representatives from 30 conquered species. It was a sight no one would have imagined a year ago. Our tactics work because the void can't predict them, he continued. But the enemy is adapting. Each victory gets harder than the last. Dr. Olivia Carter, now leading a team of both human and alien scientists, stepped forward. Her red hair was longer now, and there were dark circles under her eyes from working. Too many late nights. We've improved the quantum disruptors, she explained, showing diagrams on the main screen. The new versions affect a larger area and work faster. But we need to strike at the heart of the void to end this war. The heart, they had learned, was likely located at Aluminina, the ancient homeworld of the Concord founders. The void had taken it early in the war, before humans had joined the fight. Now it served as the enemy's main base. Lisa Martinez, who had become Earth's representative to the new Concord leadership, looked at the data with a serious expression. This will be our biggest challenge yet. Aluminina has powerful defenses even before the void took it. Samuel Wright, recently promoted to fleet captain for his actions at Arcturus, studied the planet's image. We'll need every ship we have and some we don't have yet. The plan they created was bold. Some Concord advisors called it foolish, but they had learned to trust human instincts. Over the next few weeks, the combined fleet gathered near the edge of Alumina's system. Over 200 ships, the largest force assembled since the war began. On the Dauntless, now upgraded with Concord technology, Samuel prepared his crew for what might be their final mission. The ship would lead a special strike force directly to the planet while the main fleet engaged the void ships. I won't lie to you, he told his officers during their final briefing. This is going to be the hardest fight we've faced. But remember, we're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every world in the galaxy. Jack Peterson, still serving as Samuel's second-in-command, nodded firmly. The crew is ready, sir. We all know what's at stake. As the fleet prepared to jump into the Aluminina system, Samuel took a quiet moment in his quarters. On his desk sat a small plant in a pot, a cutting from an oak tree that grew outside his childhood home. He touched one of its leaves gently. In all the vastness of space, with all the strange and wonderful alien life he had seen, nothing felt quite as miraculous as this simple green plant from Earth. The attack began at what would have been dawn on Earth. The fleet jumped into the Aluminina system in a scattered formation that looked chaotic but was carefully planned. Samuel's strike force held back, waiting for the main fleet to create an opening. On the bridge of his command ship, Admiral Paul watched as the void responded. Hundreds of black ships rose from the planet's surface and from hidden bases around. The moons. They were waiting for us, someone said nervously. Of course they were, Paul replied calmly. But they don't know what we're going to do next. He smiled slightly. Neither do we, exactly. He gave the order to implement Strategy Omega, a battle plan that deliberately included random elements. Each ship captain had certain targets and objectives, but how they achieved them was left to their judgment in the moment. The human approach to war had surprised the conquered allies at first. Their own military traditions were built on precise coordination and predictable movements. But they had learned that against an enemy like the Void, which could adapt to patterns, unpredictability was the greatest weapon. The battle unfolded, like a wild dance. Ships swooped and turned in moves that seemed impossible. Energy weapons and void tendrils flashed across the darkness of space. Some ships were lost, consumed by the blackness, but the fleet pressed on. Samuel watched, waiting for the signal. When 3 green flashes lit up his command screen, he knew it was time. All ships in strike force follow my lead, he ordered. The Dauntless surged forward, leading 20 smaller, faster ships toward a gap in the Void's defenses. They broke through to the planet's upper atmosphere, but the resistance grew fiercer. Void ships converged on them from all sides. The strike force scattered according to plan, each ship becoming a separate target to divide the enemy's attention. The Dauntless plunged toward the surface, heading for the coordinates of the conquered. High Council chambers. Intelligence suggested this was where the Void's controlling presence would be strongest. Shields failing, Jack reported as they took heavy fire. We can't take much more of this. We don't need to, Samuel said. Look. Through the view screen, they could see the planet's surface, a beautiful city of crystal towers now partly covered in the black substance of the void. But near the center, something unexpected was happening. Flashes of light showed a battle already in progress. Someone's down there fighting, Jack said. In surprise, Samuel adjusted their course toward the flashes. As they got closer, they could see it was a group of Concord ground forces led by humans. Earth Marines who had dropped to the surface in stealth pods before the main attack. Get us down there, Samuel ordered. They need support. The Dauntless landed hard in what had once been a grand plaza. Samuel led a team outside carrying portable quantum disruptors. They joined the battle already in progress, where Sergeant Gary Miller was leading a mixed force of humans and Concord warriors. Gary was not what most would picture as a hero. He was a short man with a round face and friendly eyes. But in battle, he moved with purpose and confidence that inspired those around him. Captain Wright, Gary greeted Samuel with a quick salute. Glad you could join us. We've located the High Council chambers, but the void has transformed the entire building. It's not like anything we've seen before. Samuel looked toward the towering structure ahead. Black tendrils writhed around it, pulsing with strange energy. The Concord leaders were there when the void took the planet. It must have absorbed their knowledge. That explains why it got so much stronger after taking this world, Gary said grimly. We need to get inside, but our current approach isn't working. Samuel studied the building and the movements of the void defenses. Standard tactics would get them all killed. They needed something unexpected. As if reading his thoughts, Gary smiled. I was thinking we could try something a little crazy, sir. For the first time in hours, Samuel smiled too. I'm listening, Sergeant. Gary's plan was indeed crazy. Instead of attacking the main entrance, which was heavily defended, they would create a diversion and then drop onto the roof from above. The Dauntless would carry them up and over, flying dangerously low. It breaks about 15 standard combat protocols, Gary admitted. Which means the void won't expect it, Samuel concluded. Let's do it. As they prepared for the attempt, Samuel noticed a fallen Concord warrior nearby. The alien was ancient, over 5,000 years old according to the markings on its armor. The warrior looked at the humans with eyes that had seen millennia of galactic history. You live such short lives, the Concord elder said weakly, yet you face death with more courage than those who have lived for thousands of years. Gary knelt beside the injured alien. We're used to making the most of the time we have. The elder reached out a hand in a gesture of respect. May your species have a long future. You have earned it. With those words echoing in their minds, the humans prepared for their final push. The fate of Aluminina, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on what would happen in the next few hours. The Dauntless flew low over the crystal city of Aluminina, dodging void attacks from all sides. Inside the ship, Samuel, Gary, and their combined team prepared for the drop onto the High Council building. 30 seconds, Jack called from the pilot's seat. The ship shuddered as something hit them hard. Damage report? Samuel asked, steadying himself against a wall. Nothing critical yet, Jack replied, but we can't take many more hits like that. Through the viewports they could see the High Council building below them. Once a beautiful structure of shining crystal and light, it was now wrapped in the dark tendrils of the void, pulsing with strange energy. 10 seconds, Jack called. Get ready. The team moved to the drop doors. Each person wore a jetpack for the short flight down. Samuel looked at the faces around him, humans and Concord warriors together, ready to risk everything. Remember, he said, the quantum disruptors are our best weapon. Get them as close to the center of the building as possible. The drop doors opened. Cold air rushed in as the team leaped out into the sky above Aluminina. For a few seconds they fell freely, then activated their jetpacks to slow their descent. The void noticed them immediately. Black tendrils reached up from the roof, trying to grab them mid-air. The team scattered, using the unpredictable movement, tactics they had practiced. Samuel landed hard on the crystal roof, rolling to absorb the impact. Around him, others were touching down as well. Gary arrived with a graceful flip that seemed impossible for his stocky frame. "Show off," Samuel said with a quick smile. Gary grinned back. "Always was good at gymnastics, sir." The smile faded as a section of the roof near them began to darken. The void was coming through the crystal surface, reaching for them. "Move," Samuel ordered. The team ran across the roof toward a large dome that should lead to the central chambers. Ellen Ross, who had come with Samuel from the Dauntless, reached the dome first. She placed a small explosive charge on its surface and waved everyone back. The blast created an opening just large enough for them to slip through. Inside, they found themselves on a balcony overlooking a vast chamber. Below them was a sight that made them pause in shock. The High Council members, the oldest and wisest beings in the Conquered, were suspended in the air by void tendrils. They weren't dead, but they weren't alive either. The void was using them, draining their knowledge and experience, and at the center of it all was a pulsing mass of darkness larger than anything they had seen before. "The heart of the void on this world. That's our target," Samuel said quietly. "We need to get the disruptors down there." Gary studied the chamber. "The direct approach is suicide. The void is thickest near the center." Ellen pointed to a series of smaller balconies that circled the room. "We could try to work our way around, set up the disruptors at different points to surround it." Samuel nodded. It was a good plan. "We'll split into 3 teams. Gary, you, take your Marines to the far side. Ellen, you go right with your team. I'll take the left with the rest." As they separated, Samuel felt a strange sensation, as if the void was watching him specifically. Perhaps it was learning to recognize the human who had caused it so much trouble. His team moved quickly along the balcony, staying low to avoid detection. But the void was aware of them now. Black tendrils began to rise from below, reaching for them. One of the Conquered warriors was caught. The alien let out a strange, high-pitched sound as the blackness wrapped around him. Then he was gone, pulled over the edge. "Keep moving," Samuel urged the others. They needed to reach their position before they lost too many people. Across the chamber, he could see Gary's team facing similar resistance. But the sergeant was leading them in an unusual zigzag pattern that seemed to confuse the void's attacks. Ellen's team had reached their position and were setting up their disruptor. Samuel's group was almost there too. Then disaster struck. Teal, massive tendril thicker than the others, smashed through the balcony in front of Samuel, cutting off their path. Another crashed through behind them, trapping the team in a small section that was quickly crumbling. Samuel looked down at the heart of the void, then at the quantum disruptor in his hands. They were close enough that it would affect the void, if activated, but not close enough for maximum impact, and they had no way forward. Across the chamber, Gary saw their situation. The sergeant made a quick decision, changing his team's course to head for the central platform instead, directly into the thickest concentration of the void. "What is he doing?" one of Samuel's team asked in horror. Samuel watched as Gary led a charge right toward the heart of the enemy. It was exactly the kind of move that the void wouldn't expect. Too reckless, too direct. "He's creating a diversion," Samuel realized, "and giving us a chance." While the void focused on Gary's team, Samuel found a narrow path where their balcony connected to a lower level. "This way," he told his remaining people. They climbed down quickly. The lower level gave them a more direct path toward the heart of the void. Samuel could see Gary's team fighting desperately on the main floor, drawing the enemy's attention. Ellen's team had successfully placed their disruptor and were activating it. A section of the void writhed as the quantum frequencies hit it. Samuel's team reached a good position and set up their device as well. 2 disruptors working together would have a significant effect, but they needed the third one to complete the triangle. Gary had the last disruptor, but his team was surrounded now, fighting hand-to-hand with solid forms that the void had created to stop them. Through the chaos, Samuel caught Gary's eye. The sergeant nodded once, then did something unexpected. He broke away from his team, running straight toward the center of the void's heart with the disruptor in his hands. Cover him! Samuel shouted, firing his weapon to draw some of the void's attention. Gary ran with surprising speed, dodging tendrils and attackers. He reached the very center of the chamber and slammed the disruptor down into the pulsing mass of the void. Activate all disruptors now, Samuel ordered through his comm link. Ellen's team triggered theirs first. Samuel hit the activation on his unit seconds later. And in the center, Gary reached down to activate the final device. As he did, the void surged around him. Samuel watched in horror as the darkness engulfed the brave sergeant. Then all three disruptors fired at once. The quantum frequencies hit the void from three directions, amplifying each other. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The void screamed. There was no other way to describe the sound that filled the chamber. The black mass at the center began to convulse and shrink. Tendrils thrashed wildly, then dissolved into nothing. The High Council members dropped to the floor as the void's grip on them weakened. Some moved weakly, still alive after their ordeal. Within minutes, the massive void presence that had filled the chamber was reduced to a small, quivering mass at the center. And there, somehow still standing, was Gary Miller, though the quantum energies had left him badly injured. "It worked," he said weakly as Samuel reached him. "Didn't think I'd survive that part, though." "Never underestimate a human's ability to surprise," Samuel replied, supporting his friend. Throughout the Aluminina system, the effect spread. The void ships around the planet lost cohesion, their attack patterns falling apart. The combined fleet pressed the advantage, destroying or driving off the enemy. On planets across the galaxy, the void began to retreat as its controlling consciousness was disrupted. The tide of the war had turned decisively. 1 year later, a new Concord headquarters orbited Earth. Inside its grand meeting hall, representatives from over 100 species gathered to witness a historic moment. Lisa Martinez, now bearing the title of High Counselor, stood before the assembly. She was the first human to lead the Concord in its long history. "We did not step into the stars seeking to rule," she said in her speech. "We came looking for friends, for knowledge, for adventure. When rejected, we did not retreat in bitterness. When called upon, we did not hesitate to help." In the audience, Samuel, Ellen, and Gary sat together. Gary still walked with a slight limp, a reminder of his encounter with the heart of the void. "And now," Lisa continued, "as we take this mantle of leadership, we do so not with triumph but with humility. For as the galaxy fell, humanity stepped into the fire, not for glory, not for power, but because that is what humans have always done. We face the darkness so that others might see light." As the speech ended, Dr. Olivia Carter approached their group. Her face was serious despite the celebration around them. "I found something," she said quietly, showing them data on her tablet. Evidence that the void was just one of many threats lurking in the darkness between galaxies. The four humans looked at each other, understanding the meaning behind her words. Their work was not yet done, but humanity had proven itself equal to the challenge. "Well," Samuel said with a small smile, "I guess the galaxy will need our fire a little longer." Gary nodded, his eyes reflecting both weariness and determination. "Good thing we've got plenty to spare."